Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and we are back with Halloween Mayhem. So we're going to be doing this episode differently than the last episode. I found out that the boss actually does not provide the bonus points that he used to. And there is a chance that he has a higher opportunity to drop bonus points, but it isn't great enough for me to drag an episode unnecessarily out. So once I run out of things to say, I'm not going to artificially pad playtime just for the sake of reaching the hour. But I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a while, and this is a throwback to a series I did over a year ago called McBain Moments. Has it been more than a year? Maybe it was earlier this year that I finally sunsetted that one. It doesn't really matter. Because as many of you know, actually before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you'll get exclusive content, including this month's exclusive video, which was put out yesterday as promised. And honestly, it was like a full hour just ramble, but I had fun with it, so I hope you do too. Okay, so for those of you who are newer to the channel and unfamiliar with what McBain's Moments were, and you can find the playlist on the playlists if you want to go actually watch some of them. They were a tidbit format. I believe the average video is 5 to 6 minutes long. Was it 6? Maybe it was 7. It doesn't matter. It's less than 10 on average. Okay? And the whole purpose was to take a quote and philosophize about the quote. Right? Think about the quote. Think about the context and how you can apply it to your life. That was the whole purpose of it. And it was supposed to be motivational too, because, you know, it motivated me, and I know that it motivated many of my viewers, because they said so in the comments. And I actually have had quite a few people ask me when I'm resuming McBain Moments. And at the time that I sunset it, I felt it had run its course. And for the time being, I'm still kind of on that page. But I am open to the idea of bringing them back if my timetable allows for it. That was another thing, too, is my schedule changed. I had to make sure that I had, like, back when I did them, when my son's bus came, it was compatible with me doing them. Then for a while it was not. Now it technically is again, but kind of not really. It's weird because of the way it falls. So I'll figure that out. That might be something I reintroduce in 2022. There's another series I'm thinking about doing in 2022 on a separate channel. It's the channel that I upload all of my exclusives to as unlisted. So even if you go there and find the channel, you're not going to see the stuff. And I'm thinking about doing a Bible series. For those of you who don't know, I'm a man of faith, and I have been for most of my life in one form or another. It's a matter of it's not something that I really express on this channel very often, and to the degree that I do, it's usually muted, because that's not the purpose of this channel. Although I'm sure it seeps in from time to time. My video on theology and psychology is an obvious reference to it. But I really wanted to kind of dig into the scriptures, and I've come trying to figure out how I want to format that, and I'm going to have that on a completely separate channel. So people who watch this channel get the kind of content I put on this channel, and the people who watch that channel have that kind of content. Will I mix it with gaming? I haven't decided yet. I'll let you all know. If you think I should do it here, let me know that too, because that would be good to know. But instead, today, we're going to throw back to the McBain Moments. And I've got a quote. I've actually got a couple of quotes. But the one we're going to start with, and if I have time, and if I decide that it flows nicely, we're going to start with Virgil. And the quote is, "Come what may, all bad fortune is to be conquered by endurance." That was Virgil. And I read that. And I'm going to tell you what the follow-up one is, and we'll start with the Virgil quote, and then if we might move into the second one. The second one that came soon after that was from Napoleon Bonaparte. And it requires more courage to suffer than to die. And if you think about it for a moment, you can see where those two quotes really work together. But let's talk about come what may, all bad fortune can be conquered by endurance. Life throws you curveballs. Sometimes it throws you big curveballs, sometimes it throws you small curveballs, sometimes it just throws you a heap of shit. And everyone kind of just, for those who led, you know, lives of, in a there's a sheltered lives. For those who led sheltered lives most of their lives, 2020 proved that there's going to be adversity in your life, right? And adversity is not a bad thing. Adversity is necessary to building your character. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't suck. Because it does suck. It's going to suck. It's about the suck. But the important part is that you endure the suffering. You know, it's said that life is suffering. And that's a basic psychological truth. If you look through the psychological text, if you look through a lot of the literature, it's in scriptures of all major religions. It's in a lot of scriptures of quote-unquote minor religions. It's everywhere, okay? Suffering is a part of life. Sometimes you get to pick how you suffer, and sometimes you don't. What you do get to do in each and every case is you get to decide what you're going to do about it. And this is something that I had to learn the hard way. I did. And I've been through a lot of shit in my life. I have been through, well, I helped to care for, to a greater or lesser extent, each of my grandparents. Whether I was actually doing the care or I was making it so another person in the house could do the care by taking stuff off their plate. That was happened for both grandparents, two of my grandparents for the end of their lives. One died of it wasn't cancer per se, but it was cancerous in nature, if that makes any sense. Like, it ate away at the marrow. I don't think it was MRSA, but basically what ultimately ended up being the cause of death was cirrhosis of the liver. But there were all kinds of issues with my grandfather when he passed. And I was there for the last 9 months of his life, just doing what I could. I mean, I was in school, I had a new baby, but I was also helping my grandmother deal with all of the stuff around that. And so that was one piece. And then when my grandmother's time came, and she did have cancer, I want to say it was lung cancer. I'm 99% sure it was lung cancer, which makes sense because she smoked from the age of 14 to like the age of 60. And she'd be the first person to tell you she did it to herself. She'd be the first person to tell you she did it to herself. And so there was that too. And my mother did most of her primary care, but I picked up what I could of the stuff my mother normally did throughout that period. And those things cause hardships. And, you know, watching loved ones, you know, decay as they get ready to pass and then pass. Not decay. I don't like the word decay. Decline. That's the word I was looking for. Watching them decline is hard. And then watching a parent go through something like cancer. The parent survived. I'm not going to specify which one because I'm blessed to have 5 of them, including all step parents. I have a parent who suffers from bipolar disorder. I have family who suffers from autism. My brother has autism. There's a good chance that I do, but I'll never be diagnosed. There's no way to diagnose me. Even the doctor said, even if you have autism, you're so high functioning, you have so many coping mechanisms, we'll never figure it out. Like, yeah, fair. And why am I telling you this? Because these are all hardships. These are all forms of suffering. These are bad fortunes. And how did we get through them? How did my family get through them? How do I get through them? By figuring out how to endure them. And when I was younger, and I'm bad with social signals. And so I've made mistakes trying to do this. But when I was younger, what I tried to do is make myself useful. And I still do that to this day. I'm just better at it. There's a Petersonian idea that if you are, as an example, if you're dealing with the death of a loved one, make sure you're the person in the room that can hold it together through the ordeal. That doesn't mean you can't fall apart after. Be the person that can hold it together through the ordeal. Be the rock for those around you. That's endurance. And when it's over, and when people are able to go on with their lives, then you can break down. Go to someone you care, that you trust, and that's when you can lose it. Because you don't get around grieving. You can't avoid it. And it doesn't matter whether it's, over a death, or whether it's a change, or that something didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or the loss of a friendship. These are all basically the same thing. I'm sure the priests of my church are going to cringe for me if they ever hear this video, but I don't care. There's a reason that the card called Death in the tarot deck doesn't mean literal death. It means change. All change is a form of death. It's a death of what you knew. And you're allowed to mourn it. But while it's going on, you gotta hold it together. That's what that quote means. Come what may, all bad fortune will be conquered by endurance. So how do you endure it? Well, sometimes it means just being able to put global 85, that's about 86, I think they're going to calculate it as. Thank you, Mind Arc. You need to be able to, sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. If you can't do anything else, put one foot in front of the other. Note the calculated as 85, that's fair. Deal with this minute. Deal with this day. Then deal with the next day. If you can't do that, deal with this hour. Then deal with the next hour. And sometimes you're doing it in 5-minute increments. And sometimes you can do it for weeks at a time. Deal with whole weeks at a time. But that's endurance. Because so long as you can hold it together in a crisis, you will make it through the crisis, okay? It's funny, when my grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we knew we only had a few months left with her, and she announced it was shortly after Christmas. The thing that I think helped my family hold it together was the fact that she held it together. And my grandmother was a woman of great faith. As far as she was concerned, she was simply being called home. But the fact of the matter is that she doesn't. No matter how faithful you are, there's no way to know until it happens. There's no way to know for sure until it happens. Now, does that make me a good, godly Christian? Maybe not. But what I do know is I know what I believe is there. I know the stories of people who have had actual near-death experiences. And I'm not talking to people, I saw, no, that's the operating table light, you moron. It's the people who got to the point. So when you die, your brain actually releases DMT moments before death. So when you die, you literally go on a DMT trip. It's basically like an acid trip. And there are people who have gotten to that point and been brought back. And they say it feels like they're being... I'm trying to get this right and look this up. Fact check me on this. I believe the story when they saw it was, this is the way my brain interpreted it as it was described. It's dark. You can see, but it's like lit blackness. That doesn't sound right. Lit darkness. Everything's black. There's nothing to be seen. It's like you're in space. But there's a pool of water below you. And the only thing I can think of is that first verse of the Bible where it's, and the earth was without shape and void, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deeps. Right? And that's exactly what I thought of. And I know I try to avoid scriptures and stuff like that, but there's a reason I brought that up, because that's when you read that passage, and I see that, that's what I saw. And I didn't experience this. I just have the ability to visualize things very well. It's called seeing in pictures. And you slowly slide into the waters, and it's like that's consciousness. That's human consciousness. And I have the feeling that if you were to allegorize that, that is basically going into through the veil into heaven. So that's kind of how I interpret that. But anyway, you go on this DMT trip. So my grandmother, announces that, she's got X number of months to live, and she, we all kind of absorb, and she goes, well, I'm going home, so bring on the cheeseburgers and tacos. And she holds up a wine glass and says, grandson, get me some wine. I miss that woman. I do. And you can tell she was the matriarch of a family of foodies, because the first thing she heard when she found out she didn't have much longer to live was, make all my favorite shit. I'm gonna make it worth it. And that's how you endure it. She was able to endure even her own passing. And out of all of us, she took it the best. And think about that for a second. That takes some serious courage. That takes some serious endurance. To be able to face your own death in such a jovial manner. And it's not like she was happy to die, but she was able to deal with it. She didn't cry about it. She didn't mourn the end of her life. She was just like, yeah, fuck it. And that's what you got to do. As long as you can endure, you will come out the other side. And it doesn't matter what the hardship is. And, okay, there are certain circumstances, there's not much you can do about it. If you have a terminal illness, only a miracle is going to stop that. And I don't necessarily mean that in the faith-based way, but there are miracles of science too. The vaccine for COVID was a miracle. Okay? They developed a vaccine in record time that is, relative to other things that are developed in such a short time, safe. And yes, I know it has plenty of issues, and there's a lot of political flack around mandates, which I'm not going to get into, but you all should know what my position on mandates are by now. But we find cures for stuff, and sometimes it comes at the last minute and we're able to save people. Other times there's no knowing. But no matter what, you will make it through. Even if it's a case if it's one of those things where it's in God's hands. And that's where I'm going to come to the second quote. We've got about 10 minutes left. Because I do want to tie it in. And this one's a bit harder for me. I'm not going to get into why. But I'm going to tie it back to the Death Tarot card rather than the literal meaning of the phrase, and that's, it requires more courage to suffer than to die. I'm sure everyone here has been touched by suicide. Not obviously not us. Maybe you have been. Maybe you're someone who has the semicolon tattoo or have contemplated getting one because of your past. but family or friends, colleagues. That is a case, and I'm not going to judge any individual for why they made their decision. That's not what I'm trying to say here. And I want to stipulate that. Many of you probably know why. But instead, let's allegorize that. Death card means change. And if you can endure the suffering without walking away from the situation, that requires courage. And that doesn't mean that principle doesn't apply. And sometimes the suffering means applying the principle rather than giving into the demand. Because that is a form of suffering, because oftentimes that means depriving yourself. I have a situation like that going on right now. I'm not able to do something I love because they demand something of me that I find unconscionable. And so I would rather suffer and not have the thing I love than to surrender my principles, which to me is a form of death. It's a personality death. And it's not the same. It's not the same per se, but in a way it is, because you're killing your own integrity when you don't stand by your principles. You're killing your own integrity. And so sometimes it does. It does take more courage to suffer. It takes more courage to act on principle. To suffer because you're acting on principle than to surrender and kill that part of yourself that is your integrity. And that's hard to do. That is damned hard to do. Because you'll want to do the thing that, there'll be the thing you want to do, and it requires you to surrender the principle. Or your friends will want you to go along with them. And that will require you to surrender the principle. And it takes real courage to say no. And it's hard. And I'm not tooting my own horn because I'm in a situation like this with one of my favorite hobbies. I'm saying this to make a point. Because there are a lot of people out there who have, and I'm again, this is one of those things where they had to make a judgment call, and sometimes it means they had to surrender, they had to allow that death to happen. And every individual circumstance is different. Every situation is different. And sometimes, even if they themselves were willing to do it for themselves, they might have dependents that would prevent them from following their own principle. They had to surrender their principle to make sure their kids were fed and clothed. I've done that before, and it sucked. It really did. Like, I had to be, when I was younger, I was on welfare. After being raised in a home where you did everything you could to not be on welfare. Because I didn't have a choice. My options were take the food stamps or my child doesn't eat. And I know there are those of you who are going to be like, well, that's what those programs are for. Yes, I know that's what those programs are for. It doesn't matter. It was the principle. I don't judge other people because they need the help. I don't allow myself to be put in the position to need it. There's the difference. Again, I don't judge people because they need the help. There are thousands upon thousands of circumstances, and they're all different. Each one's individual. That doesn't mean I don't hold myself to a different standard. Is that hypocrisy? Well, it would be if I held myself to a lower standard. I expect more out of myself than anybody else. I expect more out of myself than my son, out of my parents, my coworkers, my own boss. Which is good because my boss is so laid back, he's damn near flat. Horizontal. That's the word I'm looking for. My boss is so laid back, he's damn near horizontal. if you can endure the suffering instead of giving into it and just breaking down, because that's a form of death too. If you can endure the suffering, you will come out on top. You'll be stronger for it. And you'll be a better person. All right, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate all of the support. Kind of got heavy in here, I know. Sorry. We'll see you in the next one.